Associate Professor with the School of Economics, and I am the moderator for today's session. And today we have 6 speakers, and each speaker will have a minimum of 15 minutes for the presentation. The format that we are going to follow, first we are going to ask the speakers to speak, and then we'll open the floor for the question and the answers. So, as the topic is reached to building climate resilience for Pacific communities, so the Pacific Island economies are heavily dependent on the natural resources such as ocean, forest, and land. And we find that the frequency and the intensity of the natural disaster is increasing, which is posing major threat to our ecosystem, our food security, our water source, etc. So we cannot do much about the occurrence of the natural disaster, but nevertheless we can reduce the exposure to the natural disaster, and that is by adopting sustainable consumption and production system. So today we are joined by the 5 speakers. So I'll invite the first speaker, and all the speakers are coming from, they're coming with different experience and skills. So the first one is I think Momoyo Scotty. Thank you.
Go back. Momoyo. Oh, yeah.
Video?
Yeah. Can you do the slides from
Yeah.
the slides from?
Oh.
All right. Thank you everyone for coming for attending these sessions. I am now seeing only a few new faces, maybe 3 or 4, and the rest of my team, they've been hearing this research for 3 or 4 or 5 times. So throughout our journey, so I believe we're gonna do some breaking of traditional way of doing our presentations of our research and make it into a Talanoa and storytelling session rather than a formal academic platform. And also, I feel like I have the onus to keep your minds awake because we are so full. We are full. So after the full, so the responsibility is on me. So let's do a energizer. If I say good afternoon, global development, and you respond, sustainable development. And if I say sustainable development, and you respond, blue economy. Got it? If I say good afternoon, global development, and you say sustainable development. And if I say sustainable development, then you say blue economy. Okay, let's start. Good afternoon, global development. Sustainable development. Good afternoon, global development. Okay, so keep in mind, we are breaking traditions here. I don't want you to respond to me, good afternoon, ma'am, because I'm going to refer to it later on. So yes, so a bit about myself. I am Momoyo Scotty. I am from Nauru. So here we are looking at the map of the Pacific. So the red circle, that's where I'm coming from. And I am one of the PhD scholars here at USP. I'm pretty much in the early stages of my research. My research proposal just got approved 2 weeks ago. So I'm not going to talk much about it. I'm just going to share like what the motivations and the significance of my study. So not so much on the nitty-gritty details and the boring stuffs. So the for now, my research title is Understanding the Blue Economy and Development in Pacific Microstates, using the case of Nauru Island. So pretty much the title reflects the motivations of why I want to pursue this topic. And so coming from Nauru, I'm a government senior official working in foreign affairs, pretty much in the multilateral divisions. And in our field, in our work, only I'm a one-man army or two of my colleagues, the rest with other small island states. And then every day we are flooded with all those emails and requests, resolutions here. There's Ocean Alliance there. There's so many things, and we cannot. And there's people asking. We have secured this funding to the blue economy. We have so many things. So at the end of the day, our work is focused on the main sustainable development because we are trying to report and to promote them as the normal way of doing things. And then suddenly this one comes in, the blue economy. And then somewhere in between, we have blue economy, sustainable development, and the blue Pacific, which we are familiar. And then we have our own development needs. And then it's very hard for us to navigate ourselves. Which policies are we following? Which agenda? How do we promote developments when we have all those policies we need to protect the oceans. So the blue economy, in my research, I'm focused on the ocean management, ocean governance policies. So in this sea of different terms and big ideas, there's the confusion. So, and there comes the need to address it. So we need to know what the blue economy, what is the sustainable interrelationships in between. So that's pretty much why I chose this topic. But little did I know that the blue economy, I will get more confusions and like getting lost. Now that we have blue economy, I didn't know that we have to talk about blue justice, blue bonds, and then at the same time, while focusing the blue Pacific, we have to talk about blue trade, and there's also blue washing. So I am, you see, there's so many things, and then it's getting, where is all this? Where does the blue economy fit for small Pacific microstate like Nauru? So the direction of this research, I am framing the blue economy as a contemporary international policy development paradigm through a top-down approach. And I am focusing on the policy and governance. The key development sectors that I'm looking at in Nauru will be the traditional ones, the main sectors that are driving our economy. For the meantime, we have fisheries, transport, and maritime tourism, and extracting minerals. Nauru is one of the sponsoring states for deep sea mining among the 4 Pacific Islands, Nauru, Cook Islands, Tonga, and Tuvalu. So this is coming up. We are planning, and we are pretty much at the forefront at the negotiation at the International Seabed Authority. So in all this, I have explained the aim. So I'm gonna try to understand how the blue economy can impact the development of Pacific microstates. And how will it change our behaviors? Some of these, the social aspects, trying to unpack what the blue economy is, what it can do and what it cannot do for us. So that's pretty, that's the direction of the research at the moment. So a bit of a history about Nauru. This is Nauru. As it is, 80% of the land has been mined because of phosphate mining. So we are all living just on these small strips of land. So all these are household dwellings, nothing pretty much here. So and then I want you to think about, like, where is sustainable development in this kind of situation? Where is the blue economy? Where does the blue economy fit in for a country like Nauru? So we're quite small, 21, and if you drive around this the island in the normal speed, which is 60 kilometers per hour, it only takes about 30 to 45 minutes. And if you drive at a highway speed, maybe 5 minutes, and then you run the hut. But see, it's a microstate, and we are a member of the UN. We have a vote there. So yeah. So a bit of history. So before World War I, we were under the rule of Germany, and then during the World War I, Japan took over. After the World War I, Australia, British, New Zealand took over. World War II, another fight. There's a lot of colonial rules that we're exposed to. And now with rumors of wars and famines, and we're not sure what the future is for Nauru in terms of governance. And so, yeah. I already talked about what are the main economic means that we are trying. We have tourism. We are investing in our airlines. But these are quite small. We need to do more. We have to maintain some sort of investments. But this investment in the past decades for now has been what I say. We received international criticisms on it. So let's dive into some of the current narratives of Nauru. So why Nauru? I think this is where I'm kind of understand. I was very surprised, and sometimes I feel sad at the same time, because this is the narratives that the global communities has on Nauru. So on the social media, this is just among the few. So we are being called the country of bad decisions. We are called the country that ate itself from riches to rags. We are the country that we lost. We used to be a pleasant island because that's what our name is, but then it's a paradise lost. All of these narratives and feel like they're condemnations on Nauru, but we are as a nation trying to survive. So that's a bit of this is from the social media. And then it comes along to the academic literature. I'm not sure if you have read a bit about the Pacific Islands. So we are one of the first examples of a failed state when our economy collapsed and we went bankrupt. And we are also now, according to Kilpatrick in his paper, 2018 paper, we are now the first example of a post-rentier state. So we are no longer have the resource to rent, to get income. So now we are in that post-rentier state. But is it true? I don't know. I have to find out. Some says that we are a refugee economy, Morris 2019 paper. And then some say that we are experiencing the effects of resource curse. And then we are a classic example of weak sustainability. Remember the photo that I showed before? So at the end of the day, somehow Nauru is still finding its place in the world economy. So these are the literature. And then just this year, with our collaborative partners, the UNDP permanent resident visited Nauru in February this year. And this is the comment she made. Nauru is serving as the canvas for an approach to sustainable development, programming that challenges tradition. So remember the tradition that I asked you, did you respond with a good afternoon? So what is the tradition here? What is the traditional way, how we do the development, sustainable, promote sustainable blue economy? Is it relevant to the case of Nauru? I don't know. This is what I want to find out. So yeah, that's pretty much where it's heading. Like I said before, I'm still at the early stages. I'm preparing to go out into the field and collect my data, but I am hoping that my research will contribute to knowledge, capacity building, and policy implication in the Pacific Islands. And then I was hoping that I will uncover some new commonalities and diverging opinions towards a blue economy and how it can impact the development of a Pacific microstate, and also contribute to the literature and the debates on the blue economy, especially on the rhetoric question, is the blue economy a promise or an opportunity? So the normal stuff of what you're doing the research, what's the impact of your research regarding policy and governance. So, but at the end of the day, the takeaway message from this, from my presentation and using this platform is that I want to collaborate more with you partners and then to do some knowledge sharing. So I'm so happy that the GD, the Global Development Conference, is now hosted in Pacific Islands, and hopefully these abstracts of ours that we spend the whole night trying to submit can be disseminated, and then we can earn some points from our sponsors. So yeah, that's about it. And Minakavakalerwen, thank you for your attention. My name is Kim from Paris. And then I came from Paris. I'm also
Sorry. Sorry, now I'm clear. Okay, I'm Jim from Solomon Islands. I'm also an NPOC scholar. Um, Today, I'm also excited to share with you some insights and perception and proposed actions on the topic you see on the slide. Let me ask you some questions first. Do you know that 60% of aquaculture operation cost comes from feed? What makes fish feed expensive? What are we known about this problem and how can we resolve it? Using fish meal in aquaculture is expensive and then have some ethical concerns and environment concerns as well. Research into incorporating plant-based proteins, okay, in fish feed could significantly reduce the reliance on fish meal. This shift would enable the production of affordable and effective feed, promoting sustainability for fish farmers in the Oceania. First of all, let me share with you some facts about fish meal and then how it has evolved to create a problem. Fish meal is the best protein for fish because it is rich in protein. It has best fatty amino acid composition. However, there is a growing demand, but it's often limited and costly. Okay, we derive fish meal from small fish species like anchovy, herrings, okay, and as well as tuna. However, the supply of fish meal in the market is quite fluctuate. There is also fluctuation in price. Aquaculture sector uses fish meal a lot. From the data from 1960 to 2020, aquaculture sector is absorbing quite vast amount of fish meal uses, okay, compared to pigs, poultry, and others. So for tilapia alone, if you look at tissues, it accounts for around 7% of the feed. So that is why the use of fish meal in tilapia is also increasing. Why do we need tilapia? Okay, tilapia is one of the most cultivated freshwater fish in the world. It is fast-growing aquaculture product, and then it is sort of have some kind of climate resilient. That means it has higher adaptive capacity. Okay, so it can be found in many of the Pacific Island countries. So it's available in the Pacific. So this industry, the aquaculture, particularly tilapia industry, is also expanding. So that data shows the projection of tilapia expansion at the global scale. Even it projected up to 2028. Even during the time of COVID, during 2019 and 18, tilapia production is also factoring up, with inclusion from contribution from China, Indonesia, Brazil, Bangladesh, and other Southeast Asian countries. So the trade of tilapia production, so not tilapia, but fish meal supply in the world is fluctuating. It is actually decreasing, both the whole fish meal and also the tuna byproducts. Okay, this is due mainly to the fact that there is a decrease in the capture fisheries of catching the small fish species, and as well as there is significantly consumption rate by people on the small fish species that are used to make fish meal. So That is where the problem lies. So is the price. The price also fluctuates. So the fluctuation of price and as well as the fluctuation of the supply, it makes it difficult for farmers to make decisions how to run their small businesses relatively to aquaculture. Okay, back to Oceania. If you compare the data like 2013 then up to 2020, 2024 now, like in the Oceania, our contribution in 2013 is around 0.3%. Now it's roughly around 1%. This is interesting. At least we have some kind of tendency to engage in some form of aquaculture activities that mainly emerge from seaweed or sea vegetable family, pearls, and other mollusks. Tuna is the main thing because it is available in the Pacific. So this is the one we use to make fish meal as a fish meal byproduct. Okay, so it has a good amount of protein and it is nutritious. So it is available, so we use it widely. Okay, in the research, we try to create what we call the fish meal analog. Okay, the combination of plant proteins with other products. And this is a kind of a mixture that should equate, okay, the function of the fish meal, and we try to use it in the feed. So they should come from most plant-based proteins, okay? We are trying to change the demand of the fish meal use. Like if you look at this one, fish meal and the tuna byproduct and the FMA. FMA mainly comes from plants, but they should have some kind of same function. So it creates some kind of alternatives for fish farmers to use, whether they want to use the fish meal or they can use tuna byproduct, or they can go as far as to use most of the plant. So the study mainly focuses on the utilization of this plant to make fish meal analogs. Okay, so that is where my study actually focusing on. So the perspective of the research is that we believe that tuna-based proteins, they do have some kind of potential solution to sort of diverge people's ways in how they use fish meal. So there are also some ethics for coastal communities who rely on proteins, okay, from small species, but we extract them to make fish meal. Now they are running out. So I think the proposition of making plants to become feed for fish should address some aspect of ethical issue of coastal communities. Also, it reduces aquaculture pollution. Most of the pollutants, like metals, they come from fish meal, like potassium, phosphorus, and others. Plant-based proteins, they do a very little on that. And then finally, processes involved to make fish meals, fish meal analog should be simple, okay, and with use of low technology. And it should be accessible and as well as attainable. So the research is more like a product research. We are trying to look at the method, and then we have the feed, then we can give you the fish. So like in science, formulation of diet is very, very important. But I don't want you to remember this whole diagram, it's quite difficult, but just look at the amount of fish meal. The idea is to reduce the amount of fish meal as much as possible. So we're using lucina meal and common pulsane to make feed, to compare it with conventional diet for tilapia. The same, we also use it for rambutan seed with brassica grass to compare it with the commercial fish meat. And then I'm also our team is all trying to make brassica grass meal in 100% to replace fish meal each year, this tuna byproduct. So this is the direction of the research that we are trying to undertake. Okay, so focusing our concentration on plants. So if you look at this, like these are new plants, these are novel plants. It has never been used yet in the fish feed. So we are trying to venture into breaking that page to make those plants to become usable for the animals. So making feed from plant requires processes. So we are also consider looking at those processes. They are very high-level processes, but there are also simple processes we want to investigate, okay, before we can produce feed for the fish. So these are the forms of plant-based proteins with we produce from the plants. Like that's from mulatto grass, that is from rambutan. Then we have the same for lucina meal and also common pulsing. Okay, this diagram is very, very important. I don't want you to remember this one, but the idea is if there is an increasing, if we increase the level of replacing commercial feed or tuna byproduct meal, you will see the price will also becomes cheap. So that is the idea. So when we formulate our diet, we try to make sure that the amount we replace must correspond with a price that is affordable for farmers. And then at the end, you have to equate the biological performance of the fish at which the price is earmarked before you can decide, okay, this is the feed that I want to use. I'm just showing you the FMA, yeah, the fish meal analog composition of the common pulsane and the lucina meal. and that one is for brassica meal and the rambutan seed. Okay, so we do evaluate many parameters here. You must remember, like my area is very much on science. You cannot assess when you cannot count. That is the idea here. So we try to count. So we look at these quantities, the parameters like the weight gain of the fish, how much how efficiently they are feeding on the using the diet every day, and then the quality of the protein. That is when we look at the protein efficiency ratio, how much they grow every day by percentage, and then their survival rate from the start of experiment to the end. Then we look at those nutrient proximate analysis, protein, fats and lipids, minerals and others. And we are looking at the intestinal tract of the organism to assess the conditions, how feed has been impacting the honey mold. And then we try to use the blood to assess the immune response system of the fish, as well as looking at the cost and the whole environment at which the fish is growing. So in the end, we are trying to solve one very small problem, only one little problem we solve, and then it can have a ripple effect. So when we are reducing the fish meal, probably we are hoping that we will have a cheap meal, and then we can give the cheap meat maybe to the fish. The fish can become more resilient. We know tilapia is already adaptive and resilient, but we want to make it more resilient because we are dealing with different geographical regions. So the study is very much focused on the contextual aspect of the experiment, the setup. And then we believe that it will also address some aspect of ethical considerations. This is very difficult, but because people are relying on fish, if we remove most of the fish species in coastal communities, and then people might not have enough protein. So the idea of engaging, motivating people to come and play to make feed is very, very important. So we should be able to reduce that, and then up to minimizing pollutants, and then creating volume of knowledge for the society, and then which will inform policy, government policy priorities, okay, related to research and activity development of aquaculture in the South Pacific regions. So for the way forward, I will just finish by saying that there are many challenges in aquaculture in the South Pacific region. You might want to ask a question of what is the problem, okay? And then you also ask a question, the problem, okay, it is the fish meal. That is the message I want to leave with you. And then you say, so what? So what are we doing? What kind of research are we doing? Okay, we need some kind of science to guide us in this context. We need to do a lot of investigations so that, okay, yes, we can get those plants, we can make them into feed, we remove amount of fish meal, we include those proportion of plants so that it reduces the feed, so that at the end we can create more sustainable feed to feed the population. And then the way forward now is for everyone like to work together. Like it requires ongoing research, partnership, okay, and so forth. So I would just like to say that future capacity building will require advocating through research and collaboration among all stakeholders. And with climate change, population growth, for meeting global protein increasing competition, for natural resources, aquaculture will be crucial for meeting global protein demands, particularly also in the South Pacific region. So this will involve innovating technology. It might be quite high, but we just have to think in a simple way to look around this area. And also it is important to collaborate, explore sustainable feed alternatives more plants we need to investigate. And then for us, we need to focus on collaborating with local, regional, and international research institutions to share knowledge, expertise, and tools that are currently lacking in many of our local institutions and regions. So it is important that we collaborate, we revise our thinking on what actually is the problem, and then we are thinking of now what, research, and then we come into conclusion is what is the way forward. So in this context, we are very low level of aquaculture activities in the Pacific Island countries, but it is based to start somewhere. Okay, so science is also important to inform policy and decision making in order to run the whole way of living, so that everybody can also benefit from the fees. With that, I thank you sincerely for taking time to listen. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon. My name is Flori Wangairungata. I'm a PhD student with the University of the South Pacific and the University of Bergen. My PhD research is on coral reef resilience, the role of locally managed marine areas and sea urchin herbivory on the control of algal growth. So when I was trying to do up my presentation this afternoon, I was trying to think whether I needed to make it really, really technical or just keep it simple. I'd say keep it simple. So I apologize if it's a little too simple for everybody today. But I just wanted to start off by talking about why coral reefs are important. And this is really what drove the idea to do this PhD research. So just talking about the motivation behind it and the significance of this research to Fiji and I guess the Pacific and hopefully for around the world. Okay, so my first slide here is just to talk about why coral reefs are important. And we could begin by looking at why the reasons why coral reefs are important. Firstly, is because it's a biodiversity hotspot. It holds up to 25% of all marine life, and we continue to find new species, and the discovery of new species really makes it more important of why we need to protect these ecosystems, because we still have a lot more to learn about coral reefs. Sorry, I'm just getting the hang of this. Secondly, is because it's an important food source and it's an important source of livelihoods for millions of people around the world. A lot of coastal communities depend on the resources from coral reefs. And also it also sustains economies. It also sustains families. So much of what we're able to source here in the Pacific is from coral reefs. So it's very important for us to have these kinds of research so that we can learn more about how to sustainably harvest from coral reefs. Another importance is that it's a natural barrier. We have a lot of cyclones here in the Pacific. So having coral reefs actually help to protect or act as a barrier from storms. And now that we're experiencing climate change, we're having a lot of cyclones. So that it's important to maintain these coral reef ecosystems for that reason. And lastly, it helps to advance medicine. A lot of the marine organisms are able to produce bioactive compounds that are very, very important for the treatment of life-threatening diseases such as cancers or HIV or arthritis. Unfortunately, coral reefs are one of the most fragile ecosystems in the face of change, continuously coming under threat from both human-induced and natural processes. And we see things like overfishing and destructive fishing practices, pollution and coastal developments, cyclones and predation. But among all of those threats, climate change is perhaps the most pervasive and probably the most difficult or challenging to address. So we're seeing with climate change, we're seeing the warming of ocean temperatures. We're also seeing ocean acidification, extreme weather events, and sea level rise, and mass bleaching events caused by elevated ocean temperatures leads to coral mortality. And this is a problem because it creates a shift in the structure of reef ecosystems known as coral algal phase shifts. A coral algal phase shift occurs when a coral-dominated reef transitions to one that is dominated by fleshy macroalgae. And without sufficient coral cover, opportunistic algae take advantage of the available space and they outcompete corals. The consequences of such a transition is problematic because there's a loss of biodiversity, meaning species diversity declines. There's a disruption in ecosystem function. For example, there's lack of grazers, and there's a disruption to ecosystem services such as fisheries and tourism revenue. Fortunately, scientists are recognizing that corals have the ability to adapt to warming ocean temperatures. And in a race against time, coral experts and researchers are working to expand their knowledge to better understand the strength, the resiliency, and the evolution of coral reefs to mitigate the impact of climate change. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, it calls for two critical actions. One is to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, and two is to reduce the local stresses to coral reefs, such as overfishing or overharvesting of marine resources. And the latter is what we can easily address and tackle by local management efforts. A critical factor in preventing coral algal facies is the presence of herbivores. Herbivores provide a critical function in the coral reef environment, and that their feeding activities naturally assist in the control of macroalgal growth, as well as the recruitment and establishment of corals. And many studies have demonstrated the effects of herbivorous fish on coral health, highlighting that in areas where with higher densities of herbivores, there's a greater recovery of corals after a disturbance, as opposed to an area that is less, that has less herbivore population. Unfortunately, many herbivorous fish species are targeted species and are amongst key resources that are overharvested faster than they can be replenished. Overfishing, therefore, reduces the population of herbivorous fish, which means that there are fewer grazers on the reef, leading to uncontrolled growth of algae. And the uncontrolled growth of algae, these algal growth outcompete corals for space. They consequently lead to ecosystem imbalance and reduces the resiliency of reef ecosystems. The United Nations 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development Goals includes targets and initiatives to address coral reef management and restoration. An integral part of the plan under SDG 14 was to enhance the understanding of protected areas in coral reef restoration. In a Protected Planet report in 2024, it states that 8.4% of the global marine and coastal areas are under protection. In Fiji, there are more than 466 locally managed marine areas out of a total of 410 traditional fishing grounds. And the effectiveness of the implementation of these management tools is well documented. Here you have a simple illustration of how marine managed areas can support reef recovery and coral health. So why sea urchins? Many years ago, when I was doing my master's research, I was testing the difference between protected areas and fished areas. And what we did was we put out algal assays. So they're 1 meter long ropes that we deployed into these two areas. And each rope, we inserted different types of brown algae. And we had 5 stations and we had 10 ropes per station. And we left it there for 24 hours. We came back the next day to collect all of these ropes. And in one station, we found 9 ropes and we were missing 1. And so we took some time just swimming around trying to find this single algal rope. We finally found it. It was underneath an Acropora colony, hidden right underneath. And so when we went in to take it out, there was 2 sea urchins attached to it. And out of the 50 ropes that we had deployed inside the fished area, only 1 rope was cleaned of all algae. which was really interesting to me because within the fished area, there's very less herbivorous fish. So we were getting ropes that were partially eaten or not eaten at all, but that single rope was grazed with those two urchins that had somehow taken the rope and took it right underneath the coral, and they fed on all of that algae. So that stuck out to me when I decided to do my PhD research. That came back to me, and this is what really motivated me to find out a little bit more about these marine resource and to see how effective they are at algal control. So why sea urchins? Whilst much is known about the impact and protection of protection on herbivorous fish, there's still limited knowledge to support the effects of protection on remnant herbivores such as sea urchins, and such is the case for Fiji and the Pacific. Sea urchin, specifically the collector urchin, Trypnoustis grotilla, is an important fisheries commodity, but there's a lack of information pertaining to the population stock and the distribution, and like their fish counterpart, it's equally vulnerable to overharvesting. Given the lack of data to make appropriate conservation management decisions and the high demand for such resources, this research hopes to address these issues and to demonstrate the importance of resource management tools such as protected areas as possible restocking strategies, whilst helping to restore degraded fishing grounds. So what are the current knowledge gaps for this sea urchin research? As I mentioned, the lack of data. There's very little data on the sea urchin population dynamics as well as the herbivory dynamics. There's limited research on the functional roles of sea urchins, different types of sea urchins, Echinothrix, Diadema, Trypnoustis, in how they control algal growth. There's limited research on how sea urchins interact, whether they complement or compete with other herbivores, such as their fish counterpart. There's lack of data on the thresholds of algal biomass that sea urchins can effectively control. How much can they eat in order for them to be able to, in order for us to be able to say they can effectively control certain areas of the reef. And there's lack of data on the effects of protection and management on sea urchin populations and its effect on algal biomass. What are the implications of this research? From this research, we hope to have a better understanding about the roles of sea urchins in controlling algal overgrowth. We can also learn to optimize LMMA strategies or locally managed marine area strategies, ensuring they support both sea urchin population and their ecological role. There's effective management of herbivory dynamics can strengthen ecosystem services like coastal protection and fisheries productivity. An enhanced understanding of herbivory can inform nature-based solutions for reef restoration in response to climate-driven degradation. Thank you for your time.
Bulavinaka and good afternoon. I'm Laura Williams. I'm from Fiji. Today I'll take you through phytoplankton, its role and importance in our coastal ecosystems. I'm a, should I say, marine scientist. Studied marine science, did aquaculture for my master's at USP. So it's been mostly in academia. Been more in the technical space, so more hands-on with laboratory and field work from undergrad teaching towards research projects. So we all know that our ocean is an important driver in our global climate environment. However, our ocean as we know it is rapidly changing due to climate change. Now, and our Pacific Island countries and territories are most susceptible to these changes or these impacts in climate change. So we have sea level rise, increasing sea surface temperatures, more severe and frequent storms, just to name a few. Therefore, understanding the changes in our ocean biogeochemical parameters over time and space is fundamental in assessing our ocean health, productivity, and resilience. The seasonal changes and fluctuations such as sea surface temperatures, salinity, turbidity, and chlorophyll are partially important as they influence primary productivity, which impacts our marine ecosystems. So today I'll be focusing on one of these fluctuations, or should I say seasonal changes, which is chlorophyll signatures. And these are an indicator for phytoplankton. But before I move on to what phytoplankton is, what is plankton? So plankton, these are microscopic organisms that are free floating in our environment. They're microscopic and they're the base of the food chain. So there are two types of plankton, which is phytoplankton, which is the plant, and we have zooplankton, which is the animal. Zooplankton feed on phytoplankton, small fish feed on zooplankton, and the chain continues. And who's at the end of the chain? Us, the humans. So if something happens to the phytoplankton, the whole food chain goes down. I'd like to drive home 4 important points on the importance and the role of phytoplankton, but we could go on and on all afternoon here, trust me. They're a vital food source, okay, for the marine ecosystem. So as primary producers, they form the base of the food chain. Waters rich in phytoplankton support a thriving, diverse marine ecosystem. They feed other microscopic plants and animals, and all the way to megaton whales, for example, the blue whale, which is a plankton feeder. They provide approximately 50% of Earth's oxygen. You will say, what? Because most people know that plants on land produce most of our oxygen, but our phytoplankton in our oceans are just as important because they carry out photosynthesis just like our terrestrial plants. Our ocean is also one of the largest carbon sinks, okay? So they help in limiting the effects of global warming and improving the health of the planet. How? So through photosynthesis, they consume carbon dioxide from the air to produce oxygen. They're important indicators of ecosystem health, as they are very sensitive to slight environmental changes. Phytoplankton are affected by slight changes in temperature, salinity, pH, and other water chemistry parameters. Example, a crash in phytoplankton population in a bay would affect many other species' food web. It could also act as an indicator for pollution on water quality and ecosystem health. For example, increase in temperatures. So certain species of phytoplankton, they have toxins. And once these reach harmful levels, where we have harmful algal blooms, they produce toxins which can kill marine life and make us sick when we eat contaminated marine life. There are a history of our oceans, and you'd say, how? Okay, so they build calcite and silicate skeletons that reflect the history of our ocean. So these are fossilized, and once we can observe these in the fossils. So they give us a history of what our oceans were 100 years or even million of years ago. So my research is in Fiji. So moving towards our study site in Fiji, where we look at the coastal lagoons, where most of our phytoplankton blooms occur. Now, coastal lagoons are one of the most vulnerable global environments in our ecosystem. So we all know where Fiji is and Suva, so moving closer in. So the Lodala Bay that we can see just off of the coast of Suva. So Suva Harbor and Lodala Bay are my 2 main sites of my study. And then people would ask why. So for coastal lagoons and estuaries, and especially adjacent to urbanized areas, the effects of change are greater. Okay, so we have threats of human impacts, poor waste management, informal settlements, industrial discharge, stormwater runoff, shipping activities. That's not counting the natural changes that we have, which is tides, riverine inputs, and normal land runoff during high precipitation. So to effectively manage our water bodies, I would say, as a researcher, effective research is the answer. So the first step towards better management would be recognizing the importance of our coastal environments. So there are still a number of key gaps in our current knowledge of climate variables and the behavior of these variables surrounding extreme events or climate change. Now, the study of the ocean is evolving with technology. So chlorophyll signatures from plankton can now be measured from the satellites. But how accurate and reliable is this data? And do we have the capacity to tap into this data, especially for us here in the Pacific? So this is where my work or my research plays a major role in the ground truthing of data from the satellites. And how do we do that? So this would be going out into the field over a period of time, collecting samples. It's quite laborious, time consuming, and expensive for us here in the Pacific, collecting water samples. Now these need to be processed as soon as possible. So straight from the field, you don't get to put your samples in the freezer and go home and then come back and filter it the next day. And you'll be like, but why not? Because remember your food chain in the beginning. So in your water sample, you have phytoplankton and zooplankton. So if you come and filter it the next day, your zooplankton have eaten all your phytoplankton. So you need to get back to the lab straight from the field and filter your water. So these water samples are filtered through vacuum filters using 0.45 micron, which is the size of the membrane filter. So very fine filter papers. Now, we not only collect water samples to process for chlorophyll, we need to look at the whole system. So water samples collected, we look at chlorophyll signatures running through a spectrophotometer, okay? So the filter paper is also then prepped as well for microscopic viewing. And the remaining water sample, once it's filtered, is run through the lab for nutrient processing. So we do the full cycle. We also use other machinery like a CTD, and you'd ask what that is. So this is conductivity temperature depth profiler, which profiles your water column from the surface to, so it collects all your, what we would say, physical parameters, which is your salinity, your depth, your pressure, your temperature. And all these are all done simultaneously. So in June of this year, I was fortunate to travel to the University of Bergen, where I got to take some preliminary samples for my filter papers. So what you see here on my left is a scanning electron microscope where we did the imagery of, and guess what that is? Phytoplankton. So this is new and exciting research for Fiji. It contributes to baseline data, not only in Fiji, but also for the Pacific. And this research shows how science feeds into policy and decision-making for better coastal management. So I would like to stress, so now that we have an idea of what species of phytoplankton we have, now that would give us an indication of what are some of the indicators to look out for, how they would behave in view of with the environmental parameters. So that sort of gives us like an early warning signal on what to look out for. So extremely high temperatures, if you have high land runoff, and like certain times of the year, look out for harmful algal blooms and etc. On a more broader scale, my research implications are for plankton communities, they play a critical role in the health of our oceans and the base of the food chain. So with implications for fisheries, primary productivity, and livelihood of the coastal communities. And in the Pacific, most of us depend on the ocean for our food source and livelihood. Major contributions to the management of our ocean health and climate change in Fiji. So my research directly links to life below water, which is SDG 14. But to be able to fulfill that, we also need to look at life on land and sustainable cities and communities, which feeds into life below water. So with these 3 SDGs, they all feed into having a better climate action and management of our ecosystems. So just give you a perspective of what our satellite data would look like. So this is an image from NASA, which is looking at our chlorophyll signatures around Fiji. So once we can ground truth our data with the chlorophyll signatures, it'll make research so much easier and better management of our coastal systems, because then you get to eliminate factors such as more frequent trips out to sea, tedious work in the laboratory. It's not to say that we don't do it. No, we still do it, but less frequently than we would have to. And I would like to close with that.
Good afternoon to you all. My name is Ula Mila, but you can call me Mila. It's more easier to pronounce. It gives me great honor to be able to share with you an overview of what I'm currently working on. And that is the integrated multi-trophic aquaculture system. So I'll just be referring to it as the IMTA, and how we can use this particular system as an eco-friendly alternative to the conventional aquaculture system that's currently in place now. So I'll highlight its potential and how it can balance environmental health and economic viability, drawing from examples that connect this approach to resilient food systems. So before I move on, can I ask the room, how many of you like seafood? Okay, I like seafood too. So just from we can see in this room that a lot of people like seafood. So it's not only us that like seafood, it's the whole world. So this is actually the World Fisheries and Aquaculture Production from the FAO data. And it shows the fisheries production trends from the 1900s. So more than 100 years of data collection up till 2022. So if you see so just by looking at this, it highlights a stark reality on what's happening with our fisheries products and the stock right now. Capture fisheries, which means the products that are caught from the wild, is depicted by blue. So from the 1900s till 2022, it has basically plateaued. In other words, it has reached its sustainable limit. So, but if you look at the total aquaculture production in orange, it has actually it has an exponential growth there. So you can see that in 1900 it was around 21.4 million metric tons, and by 2022 it has reached 94.4 million metric tons. So what does this mean for the world fisheries? Okay, there is an urgent need to adopt sustainable practices to ensure that this growth does not cause the environmental integrity, or does not cause any damage to the environment. So I'll just give a bit of a background and importance on the IMTA in the Pacific, and how it can be useful to us in the Pacific. So sustainable food production is not only about feeding people. With that, we also need to consider what this food production is doing to our environment. Okay, so the Pacific, we are well known for our marine biodiversity. We have a very unique marine biodiversity. For example, Fiji, we are the soft coral capital of the world. So these ecosystems are home to some of the most unique marine organisms, and most of them are also endemic to the Pacific and to its individual countries. So what is the MITA's role in all of this? Well, the principle behind it is that it actually mimics how the natural ecosystem works, and it utilizes the feeding interactions of different species within the system, which I'll be explaining more on. And this actually goes in sync with it goes well with our natural biodiversity. So this approach can help maintain the ecosystem health that we currently have, while supporting sustainable aquaculture, and that are suited to our Pacific's unique environment. So let's just see some of the comparisons of the IMTA and conventional aquaculture methods. You all know that most of the conventional aquaculture methods that are in place now is usually monoculture, and it's just culturing of one species. So IMTA is using 3 or more species in the system. Okay, so one of the advantages about the IMTA is that it can actually, it's a social acceptance, because it aligns well with community goals for environmental protection and sustainable development. So it actually fosters better working relationships with aquaculture operations and local villages as well. And it significantly, the IMTA system, it significantly reduces environmental footprints in the marine ecosystem compared to conventional aquaculture system. So while standard systems often lead to high nutrient waste, which contributes to eutrophication and pollution, the IMTA actually recycles all the waste within the system. So it's like a self-cleaning system. So how does the IMTA reduce environmental footprint? So I'll just show you the concept of how it actually works. So the illustration shows a typical IMTA system that's inspired by natural ecosystems. So it involves co-culturing of different species from different trophic levels. So trophic levels is basically the feeding interactions between species. And these species have complementary roles. And this allows for efficient resource use and waste reduction. So in this particular IMTA system, there are 3 different components, 3 main components. The first one, you can actually see the fish up there. that is the known as the fed species. So this one will be fed with a commercial feed. So one of the main problems with the conventional aquaculture system now is the unused feed. This is the one that's contributing to the nutrient overload in the marine ecosystem. So all these unused feed are in the form of particulate organic matter. So that's the first component. So this unused feed will fall to the bottom of the sediment, the substrate, and they will be eaten by the other component of the system, which are called extractive species. And they're usually made up of, say, oysters and sea cucumbers. So these ones will convert this particulate organic matter into inorganic matter, which will be used by the producers, which is the third component in the system. These are made up of the seaweed, seagrass, the plants, also known as producers. So they will convert this inorganic matter, which is usually in the form of phosphorus and nitrogen. So that's all the waste basically being removed from the system. A little bit about what I am doing for my particular system that I want to work on. It's using white leg shrimp, sea cucumber, and seagrass. So usually in an integrated multi-trophic aquaculture system, we use species that are edible and can be sold economically viable. So I'll tell you a bit more about why I chose seagrass, which you all know no one eats. Okay. So the species that can be reared in this particular IMTAs, they usually have provide important ecosystem services. For example, seagrass, we all know, is an important carbon sink. So it acts as a biofilter in the system. And this is one of the reasons. And it also is a nursery for many marine organisms. And currently, we all know that seagrass, there's no established restoration program for seagrass. Seagrass is quite depleted in certain areas due to pollution from the land. And I was hoping that this particular system was a way to restore seagrass population. And then the role of sea cucumbers. Sea cucumbers, as I explained in the previous illustration, are the ones that they are filter feeders, which are also provide important ecosystem services. And lastly, you have the microbial community there. I don't know if you can see that, but this is a very important component as well of this IMTA. It's because that the microbes in just like in your gut, you have a lot of bacteria there, which are good. And it's the same thing. They're like a gut system for the marine ecosystem. So they got all different kind of microbes there. And these microbes, they actually feed on pathogenic bacteria and viruses, which so the species that's been reared there, they are less likely to catch any diseases. Yeah. So now we will look at the economic viability and community benefits in Fiji. First of all, it's the income diversification. What that means is that from compared to monocultured species, which is only one particular species, small scale growers will be able to harvest more than one species. So, yep. And then what other benefits for small growers? So this approach is particularly valuable for small scale growers as it lowers feed costs. Feed is quite expensive. And since it's a self-cleaning system, it also provides food for the QC cucumbers and the oysters and such. So it lowers feed costs and waste management expenses since it's a self-cleaning system. In conventional aquaculture, that's one of the major problems is trying to maintain the water quality and trying to keep the system clean. So, and IMTA's eco-friendly design tends to get better acceptance from local communities, as I mentioned earlier, as it aligns with the sustainable resource use, and it also reduces environmental impacts. And another thing I'd like to mention is that the IMTA, it produces very high quality seafood compared to conventional aquaculture methods. So with every great idea, there's some challenges and limitations. And I'd just like to touch on some of these challenges and limitations. The first one is the economic and market barriers. So most of the species, the initial setup cost and market demand for IMTA products are still barriers. For IMTA to succeed, investment in technology, market access, and species research tailored to the Pacific is essential. So let me give you an example. See, I mentioned earlier that species that are reared in an IMTA is of high quality. So how do you convince a consumer if you are rearing the same species in an IMTA with someone who's doing it monoculture? How do you convince them that it's high quality product? So it's basically about awareness as well. So if you are expecting, for example, like let's talk about eggs, free-range eggs. Free-range eggs are a bit more expensive than normal eggs because the chicken are not stressed out and it's organic and all this. So it comes at a higher price. So if a farmer is trying to sell products from an IMTA at a higher price, how does he convince the consumer that it's high quality and to pay a higher price for it? So one thing that's important is more awareness about this IMTA. Yeah. So, all right. And also the technical and operational challenges, it is quite expensive to set up an IMTA. And also the IMTA help the Pacific adapt to climate change by creating resilient aquaculture systems. And also I talked about the disease outbreaks and how the microbes in the sediments can prevent disease outbreaks. And it covers a wide range of sustainable development goals, primarily addresses life below water. This particular field, it's interdisciplinary. It's not only for marine science and aquaculture, it also touches on working with the community, social science. It goes into economics. So it fosters partnerships and covers SDG 17, and it also supports zero hunger because of food security, and also climate action because of the use of seagrass, and seagrass is an important carbon sink. So what are the future prospects for this? Research needs, there's definitely a need to do more on research on IMT in the Pacific, especially with the species that we have here that provide so many ecosystem services. The species can be this particular system can be used as a restocking method to replenish organisms that provide essential ecosystem services. And then I've always been a big supporter of using these type of approaches like fish aggregating devices, IMTAs as a potential for restoration, not making food and feeding, but also as a form of restoration, like what I'm doing now with the seagrass. Okay. And just to conclude, the IMTA provides a balanced approach to aquaculture and supports both food production and environmental health. It's for the Pacific, it offers a sustainable model that can strengthen food security and generate economic opportunities. So as aquaculture continues to surpass capture fisheries, adopting innovative systems like IMTA is no longer optional, it's essential. So by embracing nature's wisdom and integrating sustainable practices, we can secure both the health of our oceans and the livelihoods of our communities that depend on it. Thank you very much. If you're interested to follow me on my research journey, you can scan the QR code and add me on LinkedIn. And I also have my, okay, thank you.
Bolonaka, everyone, and very good afternoon to you all. Thank you very much, Mila, for that very informative presentation and also all the speakers this afternoon. My name is Ilyas Sakoroy. Worked on the forestry sector for close to a decade now. And something that I can see that's cross-cutting amongst all our presentations this afternoon is the common denominator amongst all is that the people involved in natural resources, whether oceans and even forests. I'd like to also briefly explain how Fiji's legislative framework in the last administration provided constraints to natural resource management in the fisheries and land sectors. In the fisheries, the previous administration law stated that anything to the high water mark was owned by the state, and anything below 6 meters is owned by the state. And these brought up issues, contentious issues in land tenure and management in Fiji. The mahogany industry in Fiji faces significant challenges as it strives to integrate traditional knowledge and resource conservation into its management system, which is rooted in communal property principles. In 1988, the South Pacific Forestry Development Program was established to assist Pacific Island countries and territories in enhancing the contribution of forests and trees to their national economies. Countries like Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, and Fiji possess sufficient land for industrial forestry to play a vital role in their economies. However, the multifaceted social, environmental, and economic challenges faced by these countries highlight the need for a sustainable, equitable, and responsive knowledge system tailored to local realities. These challenges underscore ongoing debates about traditional and local knowledge systems in resource management, emphasizing the importance of creating reflexive frameworks that adapt to evolving societal needs. This context sets the stage for this presentation, the contentious stewardship and governance of industrial mahogany plantations in Fiji. Fiji's colonial history is marked by wars, religious influences, and interventions by colonial powers left deep social and political fragmentation. These historical legacies continue to shape contemporary debates on land tenure and resource management. Indigenous resource management systems rooted in communal property principles have evolved over time but have been significantly influenced by economic development. These systems often diverge from Western notions of property and territory, incorporating elements of both while maintaining a focus on societal welfare. Preserving indigenous socio-cultural identities and their relationship with nature is critical in an era of commodification and modernization. This concept of wakavanua, articulated in the Fijian way of life, highlights the interconnectedness of physical, social, and cultural dimensions of a Fijian society. It views land and sea as an undivided entity, reflecting a totemistic worldview and a deep interdependence between people and their ancestral lands. Sorry. Understanding, respecting, and actively integrating indigenous knowledge systems in developmental activities are essential for enhancing the livelihoods and resilience of indigenous communities in the face of modernity. The customary land tenure system, integral to the Fijian identity, interacts uneasily with economic development. Some scholars argue that Pacific Islanders are sailing the winds of change while seeking self-determination in land use and economic strategies, while others question whether neoliberal approaches to community-based development adequately empowered Fijians, particularly on natural resource-dependent sectors. Conflicts over land ownership, tenure, and property rights remain central to forest management, contributing to poverty in rural areas, coincidentally, are where most industrial mahogany plantations are located. This raises concerns whether revenues from state-managed forestry enterprises align with the benefits received by land-owning units. Mahogany, or Swietenia microphylla, native to Central and South America, is one of the most commercially valuable timber species globally. Its native habitats are under severe threat due to overexploitation, leading to its inclusion in CITES Appendix 2. In the early 1900s, research organizations from Australia and New Zealand introduced mahogany from various South American countries to Fiji. By the 1960s, the Alliance government at the time leased 100 hectares of land in Tailevu for the first mahogany plantation in Fiji. Since then, approximately 75,000 hectares of mahogany have been established, and landowners now receive less than $20 per cubic meter of lease rentals and stampards. In 2020, the Fiji Hardwood Corporation, or also called FHCL, generated $11 million in gross revenue from the production and sale of 38,000 cubic meters of mahogany logs. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, forestry sector revenue reached $76.6 million, which mahogany accounted for 12% of this total. By 2021, the sector achieved record-breaking revenues of $118.5 million. However, the economic gains do not fully account for the ecosystem services provided by these leased lands, which are essential for the daily survival and dependence of these local communities. In 2024, FHCL disbursed close to $900,000 for lease rentals and stampards fees for 2023. Yet, concerns remain about whether these payments adequately compensate for the community's reliance on these lands for livelihoods and cultural practices. If you were around my age or older than me, this picture paints a dark image for Fiji in the year of 2000. It shows the coup and how indigenous people rallied behind George Speight when he overthrew government. George Speight at the time was also the chairman of FATL. The Auditor General's 2018-2019 report on government commercial companies revealed that FATL struggled to generate sufficient cash flows to meet its commitments, which included lease rentals and stampage fees. Despite recording losses exceeding $4 million in 2017, FATL achieved debt-free status by 2021, illustrating the economic potential of better governance. However, landowners continue to voice dissatisfaction with the fairness of benefit sharing arrangements. The 2000 coup led by George Speight highlighted the socio-political volatility surrounding the mahogany industry. Speight's actions rooted in opposition to reforms within FATL underscore the need for holistic approaches to indigenous resource management that addresses systemic inequities and capacity building at all societal levels. Subsequent reforms in the mahogany industry revealed the limitations of Fiji's neoliberal land tenure system, which makes it difficult for landowners to enforce their rights. While some view customary land arrangements as outdated, others argue that they are essential for preserving rural communities' socioeconomic stability. Although Fiji's mahogany industry has potential for growth, it must navigate significant challenges related to legislative constraints and the need for sustainable management practices. How can we integrate traditional and modern practices in forestry, particularly in this industry? I conclude that Fiji's legislative frameworks on the forest sector aims to balance customary land tenure with sustainable economic development. Government agencies and entities working in these sectors share common values of sustainability, inclusivity, and resiliency, signs hope for the mahogany industry. However, tensions remain over ethical and practical aspects of resource management, particularly regarding the fair and equitable distribution of benefits. Therefore, integrating an interactive science to policy interface into the traditional governance structures is critical to promoting sustainable forest policies. Effective leadership that incorporates all stakeholders is also as essential for ensuring ethical and environmentally sound management for the mahogany industry. With that, I would like to thank everyone for your time this afternoon, and also to the University of the South Pacific and the University of Bergen, and also the GBN conference. Thank you very much.
Okay, I would like to thank all the speakers. I think we had a very interesting presentation on diverse topics yet related topics. Blue economy, fish meal, coral, phytoplanktons, aquaculture, and mahogany. So we have maybe 2 minutes for the question and answer. So we'll take maybe 3 questions, and you can identify whom your question is directed to before we'll go for tea break. Anybody? Yeah, we have one question there.
For the science setups, particularly the aquaculture and Laura's presentation, how replicable are your setups? Meaning, how easy would it be done? Similar setups be done in other Pacific Island countries? And what efforts can be made that make this replication possible?
Thank you for your question. That's a very good question, Richard. In the Pacific right now, sorry, I'll stand up. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for the question. In the Pacific, there hasn't been really any work done on the integrated multi-trophic aquaculture system. As I explained earlier, because of one of the limitations of trying to, because all the different species that are cultured within the system, they have different water quality needs, they are biologically different, and they have different feeding needs. So to try and, so that's one challenge in itself. But to try and replicate it here in the Pacific, I believe it is possible because the same has been done in other Southeast Asian countries with similar climatic conditions. So I definitely believe it is possible, especially with the species that are currently available here. For example, we got the black-lipped oyster. That's a good example of a species that can be used. We've got the sea cucumber, and not only is it a good species to be used, they also are species that provide ecological services, and they have a cultural significance to the Pacific Islands. So in other words, it will get the approval of the community. So I think the only gap that will probably come in, like to make it a bit difficult to try and replicate this, is probably the knowledge and skills that people need to have. So I think one of the most important things that we need to do is community engagement and knowledge transfer. But you know how village communities are. They have their youth groups. I'm currently working with a youth group in Natalera, and they are always very eager to work on this type of projects. So I think it's definitely we can do it, and that's what I'm trying to actually do with the community in Natalera, which is in Tawasamu near Tailevu. We were working on a seagrass restoration project there with GIZ, and that's where I got the idea to try and try and use seagrass in the IMT system. Okay. Is that okay?
Thank you. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say that those were all really high quality presentations, and it was great to see you all put it in such great context. And I didn't know any of this, and I learned a lot. And that's not always the case with PhD students. So well done. I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. Any other comments or question? Anybody else? No? Okay, so thank you very much for your presentation, and audience, thank you very much for coming and supporting our PhD students. So see you at the coffee break. Yeah.